Welcome to Nonfiction Insights.
Heh.
We get a ton of requests, and this one was pretty popular.
Yeah, a lot of you were really interested in this one.
So we're diving into Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
It's a classic.
It really is. I mean, this book, it had a huge impact on, how we understand the way our minds work.
Totally.
Judgments, decisions, all that.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to break down those big ideas.
Absolutely. Make them clear, and we'll show you how they actually show up in your own life. The stuff you do every day.
So you can actually use this stuff. Okay, let's jump right in. This whole idea of two systems, System 1 and System 2, it's kind of the heart of the book, right?
That is,
It's like the
yeah.
foundation. So
Yeah.
can we try to put that in simple terms? System 1, it's that fast, gut feeling part of our brain.
Exactly. It's automatic. It's like effortless. You don't really think about it.
So if you see a picture of a really delicious looking pizza,
Ooh, yeah.
that instant, I want that feeling. That's System 1.
That's it. It's quick, intuitive, and honestly, a lot of times it's driven by emotion.
So it's not always about logic.
Not always, no. Think about this. Have you ever heard that example? Is the letter K more likely to be the first letter in a word or the third?
I think I have.
Most people instantly say, oh, the first letter. It's easy to think of words that start with K, but statistically, K is way more common as the third letter.
Really?
Yeah. But our brains, they go for what's easy to remember, what pops into our heads quickly.
Right. That's that availability heuristic, right?
Exactly. Things that are easier to recall, we tend to think they happen more often.
So if we keep hearing about, plane crashes on the news, even if they're super rare, we might start to feel like they're way more common than they actually are.
It makes sense, right?
Huh.
Our minds latch on to those vivid examples. I even caught myself doing this once. I was wondering if infidelity was more common among, say, politicians.
Interesting.
And then I realized we probably just hear about it more because it's a big deal when it happens with public figures. The media jumps on it. It's not necessarily that it's actually more common in that group.
So it's not always about the actual statistics. It's about what we're exposed to, what sticks in our memory.
Right. And the thing is, this fast thinking, it's not always bad. Even experts, people who are really good at what they do, they rely on it.
Oh, yeah, like a doctor who can make a quick diagnosis just by looking at a patient.
Yeah.
Or a chess master seeing a move way ahead.
Exactly. They've built up this incredible library of experience, and they're recognizing patterns. Herbert Simon, he put it perfectly. He said, intuition is nothing more and nothing less than recognition.
So it's like their System 1 is drawing on all that accumulated knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, that's the fast lane, the intuition lane. Now, System 2, that's where we have to really buckle down and think things through.
Right. It's the more deliberate, the analytical side of our thinking.
So it's like solving a tough math problem
Mm.
or planning a big trip with all the details.
Yeah, it takes effort. You have to focus. Pay attention.
I know when I have to, remember all the state capitals or something like that, my brain feels like it's working overtime.
That's System 2 for sure. Or imagine trying to drive on the left side of the road if you're not used to it. You're going to be super focused.
Totally. You can almost feel how much harder your brain is working. And, I remember reading that there are even physical changes that happen when System 2 kicks in.
Oh, yeah.
Like your pupils dilate, your heart rate goes up. That's pretty wild.
It is. It shows you how much effort is involved.
Right.
And the funny thing is, if you get too overloaded, if it's too much, those pupils might actually shrink back down.
Wow.
It's like your brain is saying, okay, that's enough. I can't handle anymore.
And sometimes all that focus can make us miss things.
Oh, you mean like inattentional blindness?
Yeah, exactly. Like that famous experiment with the gorilla. People were so focused on counting basketball passes, they totally missed a gorilla walking right through the scene.
It's a classic. And it shows that even though System 2 is really important for those complex tasks, it can also have its drawbacks.
So System 2, it's essential for following rules, for comparing different options, for making those deliberate choices.
Exactly. It can hold multiple ideas in mind and think through them logically.
And it can also step in and check those gut feelings that System 1 throws our way.
Right. Like that example, if you hear someone described as meek and tidy, do you automatically think, oh, they must be a librarian?
Yeah, it's kind of a classic stereotype.
System 1 might jump to that conclusion, but System 2 can say, hold on, how many librarians are there really? Statistically, it's probably more likely they have a different job.
So System 2 is like that voice of reason, the one that considers the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it's also the one that allows us to, set our minds to do new things, even if they're difficult.
Right, those are called task sets. Like if you decide you're going to proofread every single email super carefully, that takes a conscious effort.
Definitely. And I'm guessing our brains are pretty good at avoiding that kind of effort whenever they can get away with it.
Oh yeah. We're wired to conserve energy.
Yeah.
Our brains want to take the easy route whenever possible. That's the law of least effort.
So even just thinking coherently, like staying focused on one train of thought, that takes self-control.
It does. Think about how easy it is to get distracted. You're working on something important and suddenly you're checking your phone or craving a snack.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. So all that mental effort, whether it's thinking hard or resisting those temptations, it all comes from the same limited pool of mental energy.
That's the idea behind ego depletion.
So if I use up a bunch of willpower in the morning, maybe by skipping that donut, I might have less self-control later in the day.
It could make you more likely to give in to other temptations.
Or maybe I'll just struggle more with a difficult task because my brain is tired.
Exactly.
That's fascinating and a little bit scary.
Well, it highlights the importance of being aware of our limitations, and it reminds us to be kind to ourselves.
Right. We're not robots. Our mental energy ebbs and flows. And, those little brain teasers like the bat and ball problem, they show how easily we can jump to the wrong conclusion if we don't engage system 2.
Cognitive reflection test, yeah. It's a classic. People who score lower on that test, they tend to be more impulsive, less patient.
So there's a link between our ability to resist that initial intuitive response and how we make decisions in general. Okay, so we've got this framework of the two systems, but then Kahneman goes even deeper, right? He talks about those mental shortcuts that system 1 uses, the heuristics.
Right, and how those heuristics can sometimes lead to biases, those systematic errors in our thinking.
So we talked about availability. What's another big one to be aware of?
Well, the halo effect is a big one.
Mhm.
That's where our overall impression of someone, maybe they're charismatic or attractive, it influences how we judge their other qualities.
So if you find someone likable and charming, you might be more likely to trust their judgment, even if there's no real reason to.
It's like that initial positive feeling creates a halo around them, and it makes
Yeah.
us see everything else in a more positive light.
It makes sense, but it's definitely something to be aware of.
And a lot of these biases come from the way our associative memory works. It's all about connections. Think about seeing the words sick and green together.
Yeah, not a pleasant combination.
Right. It triggers a whole bunch of related thoughts and feelings, nausea, disgust. And it happens automatically. You don't even have to think about it.
So it's like our brains are constantly making these associations in the background, shaping how we perceive the world.
Exactly. And a lot of it happens below our conscious awareness. We're often acting on these associations without even realizing where they came from.
That's kind of freaky.
Well, it shows how powerful those underlying processes can be. And priming effects, they demonstrate this even further. Like if you're exposed to words related to old age, you might unconsciously start walking a little slower.
Wow. Subliminal messaging.
In a way, yeah. It's subtle, but it can have a real impact.
So it's not just about the content of our thoughts. It's about how easily they come to mind, how fluent or disfluent the thinking process feels.
Right, that feeling of cognitive ease or strain. And that feeling itself can influence what we believe.
So if something feels easy to understand, we're more likely to accept it as true.
It makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. If something feels familiar, our brains assume it's safe. But in today's world, that can sometimes lead us astray.
Like if you hear a lie repeated often enough, it can start to feel true just because it's familiar.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Huh?
Repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity can breed belief.
And even something as simple as the font being easy to read, that can make a difference.
It can. If the information is presented in a way that's easy to process, we're less likely to be critical of it.
And our mood plays a role too, right?
Yeah.
When we're in a good mood, we tend to rely more on that quick, intuitive system 1 thinking.
That's right. A good mood signals to our brain that everything's fine, we can relax, we can go with our gut.
But that can also make us less vigilant, more prone to those logical errors.
It can. When we're feeling happy and carefree, we're less likely to question things.
And a bad mood, that can trigger the more analytical system 2 thinking.
It's like our brains are saying, okay, something might be wrong here, let's be more careful.
So our emotions are constantly influencing how we process information. It's like our minds are always trying to weave together a coherent story, to find meaning, to see cause and effect.
Absolutely. We crave explanations.
Mhm.
We want to make sense of the world. Even when things are random, we look for patterns.
So system 1 is like the storyteller, constantly trying to connect the dots. And it seems like it's also quite gullible.
It is. System 1 is quick to believe. It's System 2's job to step in with the doubt, to question things. But as we've discussed, System 2 can be lazy.
Or just overwhelmed. It can't always keep up.
And that's when we're most susceptible to those biases.
So this idea of what you see is all there is, WYSIAD, that's a big one.
It is. It highlights how often we jump to conclusions based on very limited information. We don't always stop to consider what we might be missing.
Even when we know we're only getting one side of the story, it's hard not to be influenced by it.
It's human nature. Our brains are wired to make quick judgments.
And when faced with a difficult question, our brains often try to answer an easier one instead.
Substitution, yeah. System 1 is always making these basic assessments in the background. Is this person friendly? Is this situation dangerous?
And those assessments can then be used to answer more complex questions.
Even if those questions aren't directly related.
Like trying to guess how tall someone is based on how intelligent they seem.
Right, or that mental shotgun effect, where trying to answer one question triggers all these other thoughts and feelings.
And things like judging someone's competence based on their face. That relies on this substitution as well.
It does. We're constantly making these snap judgments based on very superficial cues.
And even something as basic as understanding language that involves these automatic assessments of similarity, causality, availability.
It's all happening below the surface.
Wow. It's amazing how much our thinking is driven by these unconscious processes.
It is. And it highlights the importance of bringing those processes into conscious awareness.
So we can start to question those automatic judgments, those biases, like the affect heuristic, where our emotions color our perceptions.
Right. Our likes and dislikes can have a huge impact on how we see the world.
And even the order in which we're asked questions can make a difference.
It can. Because of WYSIAD, what's top of mind can influence our overall judgment.
So understanding all of this, the two systems, the heuristics, the biases, it's not just theoretical. There are real practical implications for how we live our lives.
Absolutely. For example, knowing about the availability heuristic can make you a more critical consumer of news.
Right, just because something is getting a lot of attention doesn't mean it's the most important thing to worry about.
And understanding WYSIAD can help you make better decisions when you have limited information.
Whether it's in your relationships, your career, or even just evaluating political candidates.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our perspective is always limited.
And when it comes to experts, knowing about the two systems helps us distinguish between genuine expertise and just overconfidence.
A true expert has built up that deep knowledge through years of experience.
Like a doctor who's seen thousands of patients, or a chess master who's played countless games.
Their intuition is based on a vast amount of data.
And being aware of cognitive ease and strain can help us evaluate information more effectively. If something feels too easy to believe, maybe we should slow down and think it through.
Exactly. Engage System 2. Be skeptical.
And understanding ego depletion, that can help us manage our energy better. Don't try to make big decisions when you're mentally exhausted.
That's good advice.
And let's not forget about our tendency to see patterns where none exist, like that hot hand fallacy in basketball.
We love to find causal explanations, even for random events.
And understanding the anchoring effect can be incredibly valuable in negotiations.
Oh yeah, knowing that even an arbitrary number can influence our estimates, that's powerful information.
It can help you get a better deal, whether you're buying a car or negotiating your salary.
And being aware of our optimistic bias and the planning fallacy, that can help us be more realistic about how long things will take and how much they'll cost.
So many practical takeaways. Now, it's important to remember that thinking fast and slow, it's a model. It's a way of understanding how our minds work, but it's not perfect.
Right, there are always exceptions. And the context matters.
There's been a lot of discussion and debate about some of these ideas since the book was published.
And that's a good thing. It shows that the field is evolving.
Like that whole debate about the Linda problem?
Oh yeah, the feminist bank teller. It really highlights how our intuitions about probability can be flawed.
And the example of the flight instructor who thought punishment was improving performance when it was really just regression to the mean.
It shows how easy it is to misinterpret data, to see patterns that aren't really there.
And loss aversion. It's a powerful concept, but it's not always true.
Right, the endowment effect, our tendency to overvalue things we own, that can change with experience.
And the fourfold pattern of risk preferences, that shows how complex our relationship with risk can be.
It's not as simple as just being risk-averse or risk-seeking.
And finally, that focusing illusion, it reminds us that whatever happens to be on our minds at the moment can have a disproportionate impact on how we judge our overall happiness.
It's like a spotlight. We tend to overemphasize what we're currently focused on.
So it's important to keep that in mind when we're thinking about our lives as a whole.
Don't let the present moment overshadow the bigger picture.
So even with all the nuances and debates, understanding these biases and heuristics is incredibly valuable.
It helps us be more aware of our own cognitive limitations,
And it can help us make more rational decisions.
even if it takes some effort.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into thinking fast and slow. From the two systems of thinking to the heuristics and biases that shape our judgments and decisions.
It's been a fascinating exploration.
We hope this has given you some valuable insights, some aha moments that you can take with you. And if this has piqued your interest, we highly encourage you to check out Daniel Kahneman's book. It's a real mind bender in the best possible way.
And remember, just becoming aware of these biases is a huge step. It's a journey.
You don't have to be perfect. Just keep learning and keep questioning your own thinking.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing this thought-provoking book with us. And to all our listeners, please subscribe to the Nonfiction Insights channel for more deep dives into the world of knowledge.
We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.